I was hoping for chains.
She stopped at a light and saw him walking in that field behind the Lost River Drive-In. Julie said he was so creepy.
Hey, what's up everybody? It's Nick here, and today I want to give you an updated ranking of the Hellraiser franchise. Now, if you're newer to my channel, you've probably heard me talk about these movies a lot recently, and you might be surprised that I'm such a fan of Hellraiser. But I am a very big fan, actually. I love this series, and I've made the case over the years that it is supremely underrated. Now, the reason the franchise is so underrated is because it became a rights play for Dimension for a few years there. In the early to mid 2000s, they pumped out some sequels just to keep the rights, and they weren't very good. For whatever reason, that's where people's minds go when they think of the Hellraiser franchise. And it's a bummer, because the first few movies in this series are genuinely fantastic. And there's some gems throughout it, honestly. It's been almost 4 years since I did a ranking. I believe it was when Hellraiser 2022 came out. And with any ranking as a content creator, when the years change, so do you. And maybe my ranking today will be different from my ranking back then. So I thought, why not give you guys an updated one? So with this ranking, there are 11 movies. And starting this off at number 11 is going to be Hellraiser Revelations. This movie is really freaking bad. And look, it's not just bad for the reasons that some people automatically think. Oh, well, it was low budget and they shot it in like 2 weeks and Doug Bradley's not Pinhead. All of those reasons are why this movie is bad, yes. But the biggest issue with Hellraiser Revelations is that it was never intended to actually move the franchise forward in any way. No, the rights were about to lapse and Dimension said, we need to put another movie out or we're going to lose those rights. So they put this thing together from script to post-production in less than 2 months. And I'm sorry, but if that doesn't tell you what to expect with Hellraiser Revelations, I don't know what will. The movie is just really, really bad. Sure, there's no money, so the whole thing takes place in like a couple of rooms in a house because they can't do anything else. These actors, I've never seen them before, and I'll probably never see them again because they're not very good. These effects, what effects? They can't even do the hooks coming out of the lament configuration. They don't have the budget for that. So we cut away and then turn back and, oh, look, there's hooks in them. There are so many reasons why this movie is bad. It's not a Hellraiser film. It's not even a film. Next up at number 10 is going to be Hellraiser Hellseeker. And if it weren't for Revelation's existence, this would absolutely be the worst one. Hellseeker may be the most offensive, honestly, because it has Doug Bradley in it. And Ashley Lawrence came back as Kirsty Cotton. And what we got was all-time levels of bad. I don't even know where to begin, okay? First, this is essentially just a repackaged version of Inferno. A lot of the same plot points, a lot of the same structure, plays out very similarly until the third act reveal. The Cenobites, Pinhead, the box, none of it really feels like it matters in this movie. This doesn't feel like a Hellraiser movie. This feels like a spec script that was on the shelf somewhere at Dimension and they were like, hey, let's put Pinhead in it and we'll keep those rights. Now there's rumors, and there have been for years, that many of these direct-to-video Hellraiser films, that was the case for them. There's no clarification on Hellseeker, but I'm skeptical this was intended to be a Hellraiser movie. Because Pinhead and everything about Hellraiser just doesn't really seem to fit in here. And then when you get Ashley Lawrence back as Kirsty Cotton, it is so underwhelming. It is a glorified cameo, and it's because of their incompetence that she wasn't in the movie more. I'm not kidding you when I tell you that they were already in production on this thing. They wanted Ashley back, but they didn't know how to get in contact with her. So it wasn't until Doug Bradley did so that they were able to work her into this story. I mean, if that doesn't encapsulate the direct-to-video era of Hellraiser, I don't know what will. Now, it's cool that she ends up being like a femme fatale, I guess. But at the end of the day, it just feels like a complete bastardization of characters that I loved. I love Hellbound and the original Hellraiser. This is the legacy sequel you're going to give me? No thanks. Keep that shit. Next up in 9th place is going to be Hellraiser Inferno. And I know there's a lot of fans of this movie, and I don't even hate this movie. I would say from this point forward, I can find redeeming qualities in all of these Hellraiser films, believe it or not. And Inferno actually has some pretty interesting ideas here. But, just like Hellseeker, it does not feel like a Hellraiser film. If you wanted this movie to be like this mystery, noir, thriller, like, I totally get that. That's fine. That in and of itself could have been an interesting enough movie. But when you try to force Pinhead and Hellraiser iconography into the film, it just really doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, I'll give credit where credit is due, though. I do think that there's actually some pretty cool Cenobite designs in this movie. I think that the twist the first time you see it is actually kind of surprising. And I like what Scott Derrickson brought to this film aesthetically. I really do like the way this movie looks. Unfortunately, it's just not a very good Hellraiser film. It kind of drags, and I think that the first 2 acts of this movie, there are some serious pacing issues. And honestly, at the end of the day, I walk away from this movie thinking, what if? What if this had been a Hellraiser movie from the start, and it could have worked that world into it better? Or, what if it just wouldn't have tried to shoehorn that in the first place? Could it have been an interesting movie in and of itself? Who knows? Coming in at number 8 is going to be Hellraiser Judgment. Now, this might be lower than some of you guys anticipated because I know a lot of people actually really liked this movie, and I think Hellraiser Revelations played a role in that. But I do like Judgment, and I have to shout out Gary Tunnicliffe. I mean, he was the driving force behind so many of these incredible makeup designs from Hell on Earth on. Gary was the makeup effects artist for most of the films. He even made a short film that he was kind of doing as a pitch for the future of the Hellraiser franchise, and he finally got his chance to direct a movie with Judgment. Judgment is a movie that is in all facets better than Revelations. It's an improvement across the board. I don't mind the recasting of Pinhead. I think the makeup effects are actually pretty damn solid, and I think he really got a lot out of his small budget. There's even this interesting new character that he created called the Auditor. But when you watch this movie, the first thing you're going to think of in the first 5 minutes is, oh my god, like we're back to like the nitty-gritty of Hellraiser. This is disgusting. Unfortunately, the mid portions of this movie really do drag, and it's not as interesting as it wants you to think it is. But the end is really cool. This battle between heaven and hell should have been the driving force behind this film. I didn't need another like mystery, crime, cop thriller in the middle here. It just didn't work for me. Judgment at the end of the day is a movie that I think had a lot of really interesting ideas, and there was a lot of promise there. If this had had a much larger budget and more time to put together, I actually think this could have been one of the better Hellraiser films. But even as is, I still think it's pretty solid. Next up in 7th place is going to be Hellraiser Deader. And this might be the most frustrating movie in the entire Hellraiser franchise. I'm just going to be totally real with you. And this is the one movie where they will admit this was a spec script that they worked Pinhead into. And it shows. Because let me tell you something. The first 80% or so of this movie is actually pretty interesting. I really like Kari Wurr in this movie. I really like this mystery of this like Deader cult that we're learning about. We have all of these questions. What is their purpose here? How does this actually work? What's their connection to Pinhead and the box? These are interesting questions. I think there's a good visual style here. I actually think that Rick Boda, crazily enough, had some craftsmanship with this movie, and it's on display. But then, when we get to the third act and they have to shoehorn Pinhead and the Cenobites in here, it just doesn't work. This forced connection between the character of Winter and the Deader's cult with Pinhead and the Cenobites is nonsensical. This movie would have been far better if it had just stood on its own. All of the goodwill they had built up throughout the majority of this movie was just gone at the end here. It was another case of some solid ideas and multiple stories that should have never been put into one. But even then, at the end of the day, I think there is enough here in Deader where you can actually have a decent enough time. Now in 6th place is going to be Hellraiser Hellworld. And I know some of you guys are probably shocked to see this one like smack dab in the middle of the franchise ranking. Don't be. This is actually a really fun movie. Look, I'll give credit where it's due with movies like Deader and Inferno for having good ideas, but they just don't really come to be at the end of the day. Hellworld was a movie that was just like, nope, we're a Hellraiser film from the very beginning. We're just a really dumb one. And I kind of dig that. because it doesn't feel like a movie that has this like identity crisis going on throughout it. No, it gives us this fantastical world, I mean, legitimately a world in which Hellraiser is a video game and all of these characters and the box and this world are like popular, like in pop culture, all the kids seem to know about it. And for the first and only time in the franchise's history, we get to see a slasher take on this story, where it's far less cerebral. It is really just, let's get some pretty actors in this movie, let's put them in precarious situations, and have the Cenobites kill them. Sometimes beheading them, or torturing them like Saw. But honestly, I think it's really fun. It's like an Elseworlds movie where you're like, you know what if Hellraiser was a dumb teen slasher? And that's what Hellworld is. Now, I've said many times before that the plot is nonsensical, and the explanation for some of this stuff is genuinely laughable. But I'd be lying if I said that I didn't have a good time. This movie is really fun. It'll pass the time easily. Honestly, at the end of the day, it throws me back to that era of horror films. It just feels very late 90s, early 2000s. And I say that as a compliment. All right, now this top 5 is all certified bangers. So I don't think most of you guys will disagree. Most of our top 5 will probably be the same. It'll just be the arrangement that is different. And at number 5 is going to be Hellraiser 3, Hell on Earth. Now, some people have this one a lot higher, like top 2, top 3. It's never been that strong for me, but I do really love this movie. Now, first and foremost, I'll just get some of the cons out of the way. Some of the acting in this movie is really bad. Like, let's just be real, some of it's not good. Pseudo-Cenobites in the third act of this movie, as they're called, are really dumb. I don't like the designs. I don't like what direction they seem to be going in at that point. Luckily, they corrected course with Bloodline and went back to more of the original spirit. But yeah, not very good. However, everything else about Hellworld is pretty cool. We get more of a backstory with Elliot Spencer, and we get to see the battle between Elliot Spencer and Pinhead, the demon that consumed his soul. We get some awesome kill sequences, and this movie has one of the greatest scenes in the franchise. The Stigmata scene is honestly incredibly evil and demented, yet so damn good. One of the best moments in Hellraiser. Hell on Earth is one of those movies that definitely feels like an early 90s horror film at times, but its highs are really high. Coming in fourth place is going to be Hellraiser 2022. And there's been interesting discourse about this movie ever since it came out that I've never really understood. A lot of people complained that this movie looked a little too polished and a little too clean. And while I agree it definitely does look more polished, I think that's just because it's the first Hellraiser movie ever that had a budget. No other Hellraiser movie, even the original, had any money behind it. This is the first one that actually feels like a Hollywood production. Now, to some people, that's a detriment. Not so much to me. I always wondered what Hellraiser would look like if it finally had the proper backing behind it. Now it's number 4, so clearly I don't prefer it to some other movies in the series. But it's definitely better than most of these movies. David Bruckner really tried to do his own thing here. This is very much a reboot and not a remake. We get an entirely different set of circumstances here. The story goes in different directions. Hell, even the box and its lore is wildly different. And I love that. If you're going to bring this back, reinvent it for a new generation. Also just want to shout out Jamie Clayton as the Hell Priest. I mean, I thought she was fantastic. I was always weary every time we heard about a Hellraiser movie ever since Doug Bradley had not been involved. And up to this point, I hadn't loved anybody. Jamie Clayton was the first one where I was like, okay, I could see this being our new Pinhead moving forward. But this just feels like a fresh, modern take on a classic property, and I think they did it justice. And as far as like the Cenobite designs and the movie itself looking polished and neat and all that, I still think these designs are pretty painful looking. Sure, is it better makeup effects? Oh yeah, do they look cleaner? For sure. But like, that's just more money. At the end of the day, some of these designs are still like, yeah, I wouldn't want that to happen to me. It's a real bummer that this movie didn't go out into theaters and that it pretty much just came and went because it got really good reviews and a lot of people watched it on Hulu. And I think they cracked the code of how to make good Hellraiser movies in the modern era. But unfortunately, it was one and done. All right, so at number 3, for me, is going to be Hellraiser Bloodline. And I have sung this movie's praises so many times, so this should not be a shock to most of you guys. But why do I have it as high as number 3? I mean, a lot of reasons. First off, I think the period piece stuff is the best part of this movie and some of the best stuff Hellraiser has to offer, period. I love that stuff. The whole, like, resurrection scene with the demon going into, like, Valentina Vargas' body is freaking awesome. It brought back some of the gross and the grit that wasn't there in Hell on Earth. There's a couple moments in the third film, but I feel like it largely strayed away from what Hellbound and the original film did. No, it's back here in Bloodline. I think Valentina Vargas as Angelique is an incredible femme fatale. I love her in this movie. I love Doug Bradley. I love these Cenobite designs. I love the relationship between Angelique and Pinhead. I just think that stuff is really compelling. And at the end of the day, I feel like this movie answers a lot of questions that we had had for years. This really does feel like a good bookend to those original films. Sure, Hell on Earth included, because obviously it's canon. Now, I'll be the first to admit that the space stuff just isn't good, guys. They did not have the technology or the money to do that the way they could today. But everything else in this movie, I think, is freaking aces, and I don't understand why this got the moniker for so long as being one of the worst Hellraiser films. Because it's just not. In my opinion, the franchise has never been this good again. The closest it's gotten is 2022, and even then, Bloodline clears that movie. Coming in second place is going to be the original Hellraiser. And you guys probably aren't shocked by this because you know what my number one is going to be. But speaking about Hellraiser specifically, this is a movie that I am genuinely so happy ever became a movie in the first place. Clive Barker's sick, demented, beautiful, evil mind created one of my favorite horror stories ever. And there is so much Clive Barker in this movie. Oftentimes when you find stories adapted for film, they lose a lot of their heart. Not here with Hellraiser. No, it's on full display, and I think that's because Clive Barker was the director of this one. It just feels like an extension of him. This movie was so ahead of its time in 1987. Nowadays, it's kinda tame to talk about like S&M and pain and pleasure and sexual desire and stuff, but back then, no, it definitely was a lot more taboo, and this movie just leans into it. I have said for years and years that Hellraiser was elevated horror before elevated horror really was a thing. This isn't a slasher movie. There is so much more going on here. There is so much subtext. There are so many layers to this onion. Every time you watch this movie is a rewarding experience because you're going to find something new about it every single time. And I think that is the mark of a truly great film. I also just think it's a technical achievement. Some of the makeup effects in this movie is next level. For the meager budget they had in 1987, Frank's resurrection scene is one of the greatest practical makeup effects ever in horror history. I will put it up there with anything else, frankly. It is that damn good. And the funny thing is, this isn't even Pinhead's movie. Pinhead became the villain that we came to know and love throughout this franchise. This is Julia's movie. And Julia is one sick, twisted, evil woman. And Claire Higgins just freaking delivers the goods. And coming in at number one is going to be Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. And look, everything I said about the original Hellraiser applies to Hellbound, and then some. The same spirit, the same tone, the same world building, it's all here. But the reason why I put Hellbound above Hellraiser is because everything is just grander. In every way. First of all, Ashley Lawrence's Kirsty Cotton is actually a character that you get behind and want to see succeed, and you believe her. It's actually a performance, not just kind of like a stand-in, and that's kind of what she was in the first movie. Let's be real. Secondly, you actually get to see the Labyrinth and Leviathan, and you get to see a Cenobite transformation with Dr. Chenard, and it is glorious. You get some fantastic practical effects in this one. Some absolutely disgusting moments of blood and viscera that are just, the bed scene, like I just don't even want to think about it. And Julia is even more wicked than she was in the first movie. It just feels like Hellbound, they finally had just enough money and ambition to fully realize the world that Clive Barker always wanted to. This is the cream of the crop in this franchise. It does everything the first movie did better. and then adds on top of it. Now, I understand for some people, they don't like the fact that this movie got bigger and wilder and more over the top. They much prefer the more secluded, claustrophobic original film. And that's just a different strokes kind of thing. But for me, I had grand designs in my brain after watching Hellraiser of what this could be, and Hellbound was the first time, and arguably really the only time, we've ever seen it come to fruition. Well, there you have it. We just survived 11 circles of hell. For me, most of those circles are actually pretty awesome. But for a lot of people, this is a franchise that they just don't care about, and they don't want to revisit it anytime soon. I implore you to go back and watch some of these movies, especially the ones I had in my top 5, because I genuinely think those are some great horror films. But the question is now for you. What do you guys think of the Hellraiser franchise, and how would you rank these movies from 11 to 1? Whatever your thoughts, I want to hear down below in the comment section, so sound off. I want to thank you guys so much for watching and ask that you please leave a like on the video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. This is Nick at the Lost Forever Drive-In, and I'm going to try opening this box again because I'm pretty sure I'm going to get changed this time.